Hello, everybody, and welcome to Inside Veganism, Season 1, Episode 1, the start of something beautiful with a tremendous amount of longevity, or simply perhaps a flash in the pan doomed to an early demise. Who knows? Really, that's up to you. What Inside Veganism is all about is bringing together activists, people sympathetic to the vegan movement, to have some interesting conversations about the movement, perhaps to ask difficult questions about the movement, but really to spread good ideas, to talk about effective activism, to talk about some of the problems that we all face in our daily lives for daring not to consume animal products or wear them or to have these considerations in the first place. In this first episode, we're going to focus on activism and also something which may have affected you, which is discrimination in the workplace, perhaps, or in another aspect of life. Hey, maybe it's discrimination around the dinner table at Christmas. It could be anything. I've got three fantastic guests coming on, and up next, or I should say up first, will be Nikki T. Now, I was speaking to Nikki just before we went on air. She has a tremendous amount of energy. I may well just give her the show and go home. She's really up for this, and I'm looking forward to bringing her on. Just to tell you a little bit about Inside Veganism, my name is Aidan Coughlin, and my partner in crime is Victoria Pecci, and we're going live every Thursday in Season 1 at 7 p.m. local UK time. And we say Season 1 because we think we're probably going to do maybe 2 or 3 months worth of shows, see how it's going, and then evaluate from there. We want to do some live specials. Something I really want to do is do a marathon show going around the world. I think Facebook Live will kick you off after around 4 hours. So that might be the max, but I want to get up at some stupid time and talk to people around the world. I want to talk to people in Australia about this movement, especially as I have some fantastic family there who are living the vegan lifestyle, or at least making an attempt to. So that's something I really want to do. And perhaps other specials as well. There are many, many different ideas. I would love to maybe broadcast from festivals or marches or protests or during activism events. But again, this show is not about myself or about Victoria. It's about the planet. It's about the animals. It's about our future, or more to the point, perhaps our children's future. So that's why we are doing this. And my particular angle regarding the vegan movement, in some sense, clearly, I want the same thing as I'm sure all of the vegan movement does, but perhaps some of my view about what is most effective might differ from the mainstream or from the most popular opinion. That will be seen, and perhaps I'll push back at perhaps what I personally consider to be ineffective activism, or perhaps the way in which sometimes we are our own worst enemy in some ways, but we'll look at that. I can see your comments and questions live, so feel free to say whatever you like. Thank you very much, Toby. I hope to live up to your expectations, and hello to William Chipperfield. Wherever you're tuning in around the world, please let us know. I'd love to know whereabouts you are as we go. We're broadcasting this from East Anglia in England, and I believe in this first edition everyone's from the UK, but that's just the way things worked out. I want to have shows talking to people around the world. Veganism isn't about one country. It's certainly about one planet. And I would like to reflect that. So in this edition, we are going to be talking about effective activism and discrimination in the workplace. My first guest will be Nikki T, who I'm about to bring on. And we shall see just how much energy Nikki T has. How are you, Nikki?
Hello, I'm very, very well. How are you?
I'm great. You were bouncing off the ceiling before we went live. How are you feeling now?
Yeah, exactly the same. I'm so stoked to be live streaming. It's been quite a while, and it's even better to do it with like-minded friends. So thank you so much for having me.
It's nice that you say that, because I'm not sure if you know that the Groucho Marx quote, but he said he would never be a member of a club that would have him as a member. And I've generally felt that way about most clubs or most movements, but I think veganism is where I feel most at home. So it's
Me
nice
too.
to meet, it's nice to meet a like-minded person.
Isn't it?
So, Nikki, what's going on with you at the moment?
At the moment, I'm unfortunately working full time. I was a full time activist for most of the summer, but unfortunately, funds ran out, so I'm working. But in my spare time, I'm attending vigils, cubes of truth, putting videos on YouTube. I'm doing my best.
Nikki, I've got a fantastic picture of you up on the screen. I'm not sure if you can see it from your mobile device, but I've got your Instagram profile picture, I believe, and you have a caption on that t-shirt which says "Eating animals is weird."
Yeah.
I like that. It is a bit weird, isn't it?
It is a bit weird. I quite often do street interviews and will approach people with that as my first question. Like, do you think it's weird that we love some animals and eat others? Just launch into a conversation that way. It's a good conversational piece of clothing.
What are your main interests then regarding veganism? Because I think for some people, veganism simply means it's what goes on your plate. But what does veganism mean to you?
Oh, so much more than what goes on your plate. I think initially it is about what goes on your plate, and then for me it snowballed. It started with, right, I'm never ever eating any of that shit ever again. I feel sick, disgusted, can't believe I've been doing it. But and I literally used to say, I'll never wear a t-shirt that says I'm vegan. I won't go and tell people I'm vegan. I won't force others to become vegan. And then 3 months later, I'm a full-time activist on the street talking to people about how fucked up it is that we eat animals. um, and it's firstly, for me, it's about the animals. Slitting animals' throats by the billion to eat their bodies when we don't need to survive is just, it's a crime. It's horrendous, and everyone needs to know, and I do my best to spread that message. So for me, in my heart, it's the animals, and also the planet. We're destroying the planet, which is sad, and it doesn't really bear thinking about. I don't think we can actually comprehend what we're doing. I think if we could all see it in front of our face, um, ocean dead zones. We've got a big problem with plastic as well. I know that's slightly off topic, but the meat and dairy industry contributes to that. All the packaging they use, and it's getting out of control. And yeah, look, I'm just thinking about it, and I'm like, oh no, it's so sad. So yeah, I'm just so passionate about speaking to people about it, and in an effective way, or what I perceive as an effective way anyway.
It's interesting to hear you talk about your journey into activism because I would imagine that many people could relate to that. From my perspective, I was a vegetarian from my late teens and then all the way through until last year. And I felt as a vegetarian at the time that I had a very good moral conscience. I was doing the
Mm.
right thing. I was doing enough. And there was always something though that used to gnaw at me. And I used to think, I don't know about these vegans. They make a lot of good points, but perhaps even I was guilty of it. They're a bit extreme, shall we
Yeah.
say. And then here I am, probably less than a year later. And I don't like to use the term radicalized because that has many connotations. But what I mean to say is the more you know about this, it is inescapable to live any other way. And the activism itself becomes completely addictive. And I wondered, was that sort of a similar story for you?
It's so addictive. I always find myself plotting ways to get out and do activism. It's in the forefront of my mind. And activism isn't necessarily what I do. I know I have a sort of out there personality, and I will just walk up to strangers in the street and talk to them. You don't have to do that. It's sharing food, enlightening people with information, perhaps at work, your parents, your friends, your partner, just just conversations about it. That in itself is activism.
You make an interesting point, because perhaps there is a distinction about what activism is. And I always used to think that perhaps the best way of being an advocate for the vegan lifestyle was simply to live as a vegan and to be a role model and do the right thing. But very quickly, I found out that there were too many conversations that I wasn't having. And I felt that the world was passing me by, and I felt the hand of history on my shoulder. And to some extent, without sounding completely pious, that I simply had to do something. I couldn't let it pass me by.
That resonates.
That
hit right in the heart. Yeah, resonates so much. And another beautiful thing is that I've always been, it's going to sound weird, and no, it's not a cult, but I always knew there was something really wrong with the world, and I knew that there was something I could do, and I found it. And that is the most beautiful, beautiful thing.
You're absolutely right. And you mentioned obviously about sharing. So a quick shout out to listeners, or viewers, I should say. Please do share this. We want this content to go far and wide. Please. And this is about giving a voice to the Nikki T's of the world, who have a lot to say and a lot of passion. One of the points that we're going to cover in this episode is about discrimination in the workplace. And we need to tread very carefully here, or I should say Nikki does. Nikki, I want you to tell me a story about a fox that evidently met an unfortunate demise, and viewers can see a picture of this fox. This is taken from your Instagram feed. What happened with this fox, Nikki?
So at work, I can go for a break. There's like a smoking den. I go and sit in there, and I vape away and just chill. And it's a beautiful view. There's a lake, quite a large lake in front of me. And I was just sat in the little half building and looked out across the lake, and I've seen this little guy dragging himself with his front legs, and his back legs were not working at all. And I thought, oh fuck. And you know, when you're looking at something and you're analysing it, like, okay, best course of action, who do I need to speak to? Should I go over there? Is he gonna bite me because he's in pain if I try and approach him? You know, all those things going on. So, and it was raining, and he kept, like, he was dragging himself, and he was stopping and looking up, and it was raining on him, and I just thought, oh my god, I can't leave him like that. That's awful. And anyone, meat eater or vegan, would see something like that and think, oh, I've really got to help this little guy. So anyway, I've gone back to my office, spoken to my colleague, and said, I need the local wild animal rescue or animal rescue. There's a fox, he's in bits, it's horrible, he's really suffering, lots of pain, blah blah blah. Long story short, it took about 3 hours to get somebody out, because they wanted me to test the waters as such, to see if they would be able to approach him and get hold of him, because if he was able to run away and get lost, it would be a waste of resources to send somebody out to help him. So I approached him, I walked straight up to him, he was just looking up at me, like, and I don't know if anybody else has experienced this or seen this, but there's a look in an animal's eyes when they're in pain, and he was looking me dead in the eye, and I knew that he was in agony. I could only see, you know, the picture you put up, I could only see sort of that part of him, so I couldn't see the legs, the back legs. Anyway, an officer comes out, and I walked her round to him. He had right behind him there in that picture is the lake. He'd sort of just parked himself there, and she walked over, and he tried to scurry away. The front part of him was all right. He had quite a lot of life in him still. He he didn't look to be really ill other than the leg problem. So she thought she better get her grasper. The grasper is the thing that they put around the animal's neck to get them, which is horrible. But yeah, it's, you know, one of those things. So she went back to get that. Came back. She leaned over and just missed him. And she then said that she saw his back end and that his leg was literally snapped the wrong way and flopping the wrong way, and it was a really, really bad injury. And as she did that, he actually jumped into the lake to escape us. And he swam out into the middle of the lake. He tried to do a circle to come back to the side of the lake on ground, and he didn't make it. He got tired. We could see him getting more and more tired, and he drowned, unfortunately. It was absolutely horrendous. The lady said that she'd never seen something so gruesome. She was really cut up, bless her. I kind of had to comfort her, really. It was so sad, and I felt so bad. There were tears shed, and she was going, "Fuck, what a fucking shit job! Oh my god!" Like, stressing out. It was horrible, really horrible. Poor baby. But in hindsight, she actually said that due to his injury, she would have euthanized him. So I kind of weighed it up, and I thought, not to diminish the suffering, like the death he had, but it was the space of perhaps like a minute and a half where he swam and got tired and drowned. It was really quick, and I thought if she'd have got him by the neck, got him onto the ground, covered him up, held him down to euthanize him, that was probably the worst way to go, as horrible as that is. Yeah,
that was a deeply horrible story, and to be honest, I heard this story first half an hour ago, and it affected me all the same. It's interesting that this concerned a fox, because of course, when you think about fox hunting, it seems to be one of those very few aspects of the mainstream in which vegans don't seem to be that crazy, but it's just every other animal, it seems, or perhaps we can add dogs into that list. There's something about foxes, though, isn't there?
Yeah, he's beautiful. Yeah, it's hard to find words, really, about that poor baby. And I know I'm smiling. It's probably nerves, to be fair.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think it's possible to live as a vegan without adopting something of a black humor about so much, because we see so much carnage, to use the name of a forthcoming or already released documentary or TV show, that we see so much destruction, so much murder and suffering around us, that it almost seems like we're living in a parallel universe in which morals have been flipped, but we weren't affected. And it's very strange to live. I mean, otherwise you just get deeply depressed, and we wouldn't do anything like this.
How do you feel when you're sitting there and the TV's on, and there's a dead, roasted carcass of an animal, and everybody's all happy, and it's like, everybody's welcome here. I won't say the name of the company. And it's like, really? Everybody? And it's like, I'm in the Twilight Zone. What the fuck? Everybody's murdering animals and doesn't give a shit. And it's like, it's crazy. But then something like this will happen with the fox, and meat eaters will message me like, "Oh, that poor baby, that's so sad." But again, not to diminish his suffering, that was nothing, absolutely nothing compared to what animals go through on a daily basis for their whole short lives of suffering. Horrible demise in a slaughterhouse. But you cross that line from poor fluffy fox to pig in a slaughterhouse, and suddenly you're crazy, which is bizarre, isn't it? I think that's where our job comes in, to help people make that connection. Like, really, what's the difference? And it's your perception, isn't it?
Yes, sometimes my intuition tells me that we have a completely solid, rock solid argument, but we're just born too soon. And we just have to suffer the frustration of being born in a period in which people haven't fully quite realized it. But it's up to us to make that argument.
To set the groundwork. We are the in our time. We are that. My mum commenting, Nikki, stop swearing. I'm sorry. Bless her. Hi, mum. I've lost my train of thought now. I'm so sorry. Um,
I just hope that
so
my mum doesn't comment. I wouldn't be able to hold it together. You've done quite well.
she's like upstairs or something. Um, so we're kind of like the almost like the pioneers of the movement, because of how it's exploded, and how luckily in our time we have all this social media, and we can connect with thousands, hundreds of thousands, and potentially millions of people from our smartphones, and laptops, and it's insane. But there were people before us that we owe this to, because this started somewhere. And I don't know how right I'm going to be on this. Don't quote me, but I think it was like in the 60s there was like a vegan movement going on, and it sort of started from there. And then the anti-fur thing went mental in the 80s, and until very recently people were afraid they were going to get blood thrown over their fur coats. So we owe a lot to those activists.
Nikki, you're absolutely right. And I'm going to bring you back for the panel because, dear viewer, all of our guests will be back for the panel at the very end. I'm about to bring a chap called Pete on. And yes, Pete does have a surname. He's not simply just called Pete, but there's a reason why I'm going to be careful with my introduction of Pete. And Nikki, thank you very much. You mentioned fur. You mentioned fur, and that's the perfect segue. So, Nikki, I'll speak to you again very shortly. Thank you. So, my next guest is Pete, and I want to bring Pete on now. And let's just wait for Pete to pop up. How are you, Pete?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
Now, Pete, I'm not sure if I recognise you without a policeman's hand around your throat. So it's good to see you without that. How are you, sir?
Thanks. I'm good. Better without the policeman's hand around my throat. Yeah.
Indeed. I mean, obviously, the Met do a lot of fine work. I'm not so sure about
Yeah.
that. Pete,
Yeah.
I'm just going to put this image up on the screen for people to see. Pete, I've got the picture up on the screen now of a very angry looking member of the Met Police, I assume, essentially strangling you. Where was that, and what is going on there?
So that was at the Strand. It was during the London Fashion Week fur protests. That was arranged by Surge, which is an animal rights organization based in London. And yeah, this happened whilst we were peacefully protesting. We were we were on a public we were on public land, and this police officer basically didn't like it. He basically approached me, and yeah, he grabbed me by the throat. And well, originally he grabbed me by the shirt, and he told me to move. And I was asking him why. And I said, like, this is a public spot. I'm allowed to be here. I'm expressing my right to peacefully protest. Um, and because I didn't move immediately, without any warning, he then grabbed me, moved his hand from here up to my throat, and pushed me back like that. And it lasted about 3 seconds, and yeah, and thankfully within that time, another activist who was there filming and taking photos captured it. And yeah, I took a step back then, knowing that it had been captured. Yeah, so that was at the London Fashion Week fur protest.
I understand that what happened there has affected your life to some extent. And would you like to sort of explain what that is? And is this related to why we're being somewhat vague about your name? Was this something you did before with your name, or was this as a result of what happened?
I mean, I think I've kind of in general been a bit wary about using like my full name, or use like, like um, yeah, sort of having a lot of people know that, because I'm just aware of the fact that vegan activism gets a really bad name, and there's a lot of vested interests in keeping people quiet in relation to, you know, when someone starts to tell the truth about industries that have a lot of money involved, you know, I think it's wise to kind of to some degree keep your personal life away from those who would you know, try to use that against you, or you know, get family involved or anything like that, you know. And I mean, perhaps it's perhaps it's too much. I don't know. Perhaps it's like it's fine, really. And I know my name's out there in certain places, and it's okay. But yeah, to some degree, I'd like to keep it separate for now, at least. I mean, after this happened, in the next few days, basically, there was suddenly a lot of attention on it, because I think online this photo kind of went around a lot, and was shared a lot, and I guess rightly so, because of the photo was taken by a Facebook page called it was if you go to Saving Me, it's a really good vegan activism Facebook page that has loads of photos in relation to this, and yeah, it was shared from there, basically. Yeah.
Pete, I should say, actually, thank you also for stepping in at late notice, because as some viewers might have realized, some of the early advertising for this included Joshua Entis, who unfortunately was unable to appear, and hopefully we can reschedule. So thank you, Pete, for stepping in. So Pete, what's currently happening with you and the Met? Is there an investigation into this officer, or is it just ended now?
So there is, I filed a report, and there is an ongoing investigation into it. We'll see whether that will come to anything. It's yeah, it's still kind of up in the air at the moment. I mean, I think the main thing that's come from it is the fact that, like, more people have seen what actually happens to vegan activists. And I mean, the hat I was wearing is the hat you saw there is actually this hat here. It says love on it. The photo doesn't quite capture that, but I think that kind of sums up. Like, we were there to peacefully protest. We were there to show compassion, and to just bring awareness to an injustice that everyone agrees with. Like, in this country, we banned fur farms years and years ago, about a decade ago, I think. And so the general public disagree with it. It's just, and we were just there to highlight what everyone already agrees with, you know. And for some reason, when we talk about these things, and we stand up for something so clearly wrong, against something so clearly wrong, it's surprising to me that we get met with such violence, really, I guess. Like, and around the same time as this was happening, we were also hearing in the press about how there was a lot in the press about vegan activists being, you know, extreme, and there was all this a lot of interesting articles, really, that didn't seem, as far as I saw, to be supported with any real evidence. And I mean, there were certain cases of people backtracking and saying, okay, that didn't actually happen to me, in terms of like threats and whatnot. And yeah, so I think yeah, it really kind of highlights that what's actually happening. And this is one case of it. I know it's just one case, but there are many other cases, and I've never heard of any vegan activist who has done anything quite as violent as this police officer did. Yeah.
Pete, I'm not sure if you can see on your screen, but a couple of people have really praised you for the work that you're doing, and always standing up for the voiceless and the forgotten, says Toby Brown. And Joe Robertson has noted that you've done great things. It's interesting, isn't it? Because the definition of veganism is really the reduction of violence, and yet you found yourself in that really bizarre picture. You say that your baseball cap said love, and
Yes.
I suppose the police officer's helmet, by contrast, probably should have said hate, shouldn't it? Just looking at that picture. Yeah. I might be misremembering this, because it seemed like everything was happening at once, but this seemed to happen around about the same time that I think Joey Carbstrong had the incident on BBC Radio. I think, and it just seemed like for a week veganism was being compared to ISIS. It just seemed like everything that week was that veganism was the most evil movement in the entire world. Was this roughly the same time period?
Yeah, it was roughly around the same time, and I think on that point, like it's important to address that, like when people say that veganism or vegan activism is extreme, I think we need to like put into context like what extreme actually is. Like if we look at what extreme is, we look across the world and look at cases of what is actually extreme. It involves violence. It involves people terrorizing and killing. And I mean, to equate that, like to say that veganism is on par with that, veganism is extreme or vegan activism is to it's just a completely unfounded and dangerous lie, because it then paves a way for people to be like, okay, if veganism is extreme or vegan activism is, then these people who are vegan activists are, it's okay to combat whatever like the stereotype is of them doing that with aggression and violence back to us. And I think we've seen that also. There's been a kind of backlash both in the media and in public as well, with certain cases of stuff like that happening. And yeah, so I think it's very violent. It's very dangerous to say that vegan activism is extreme, because essentially vegan activism is about creating a world where violence and that kind of violent extremism doesn't exist. It's literally like saying that we don't want anyone to unnecessarily harm or exploit anyone. Yeah.
I suppose veganism often ignites the most reactionary tendencies from people. And I think using words such as extremist or militant or comparing the vegan movement to ISIS, it's
Yeah.
simply an attempt to denigrate your opponent without actually positing a reasonable argument. It's simply about trying to discredit your opponent. And I'm sure this is something that you experience all of the time.
Yes, yeah, I think, and what you mentioned about perhaps his hat saying hate, I think perhaps maybe it would say fear instead, or not fear of me, but fear of what we are representing. It's change, fear of a change that hasn't happened before in our society, but like it's a change that at the moment I think we have certain things in place that could create perhaps the biggest change we've ever seen. We have the internet, we have devices that can transform people's lives just by watching a video. And I think that is fearful. That's something that people fear because they don't understand how positive that can be. Yeah, and I think we're at a point in history where the mass change can happen quicker than it ever has. I think was it like in the last 2 years, veganism's gone up to in the UK 7% of the population, which is huge. And I think that I'm that's it seems surprising at first, but then when we think about it, like really, how many of us know someone who's vegan now, or know when I'm like talking to people about activism, so many people are like, oh yeah, my brother's vegan, or someone I know is vegan. And so I think, yeah, we need to kind of be like, okay, yeah, 7%, that's good. Let's keep going. It's going to be double that soon.
Toby Brown has mentioned something about guilt. And
Mm.
if we talk about maybe effective activism now, how do
Yes.
you personally, Pete, go about talking to people about the merits of veganism, the merits of the argument, without eliciting in them a very grenade into a building kind of response? How do you go about that without eliciting those kind of responses?
Yeah, so I think the best to begin with, I think so many people are unaware of what happens. I was very unaware of what happened until just over 2 years ago. I didn't really know. And so that's like 22 years of my life that I didn't really know what was going on. I had a vague idea, but it was never kind of consciously thought about. So I think the first thing we need to do is educate people and make people aware of what is happening. And that can come in many forms. There's one of the techniques that is a good one that actually it was Earthling Ed who first kind of highlighted it to me. It was the Socratic method, which involves raising questions with people who you're talking to about veganism, about certain things. And what that does is it allows people to come to their own conclusions rather than kind of you telling them that this is what you need to be doing. You just raise a question that makes them realize, oh, actually, okay, that is what we should be doing. Like, why? It's like, would you, for instance, like if someone says, well, they love bacon, would you say, well, if that bacon was from if that was from a dog, would you still eat that? And then why not? Why is that? And then you can talk about that. And I think so. Really, educating people in a way like that is the best method I've learned so far to really help with that. I think if people aren't educated about it and they don't know, then how I don't think we can be accusing, or we can't really be shouting at them and telling them, like saying that what they're doing, like that they're bad people or anything, because they just don't know. So I think we really need to educate people. And I mean, I've been doing that along with the rest of the Surge team, so the Surge activism team, and we've been going around to universities with the on the big vegan activism van tour, and basically that involves us doing virtual reality outreach during the day at universities, and then a screening of the film Land of Hope and Glory, which you can watch for free at landofhopeandglory.org. And yeah, and I think a mixture of different types of outreach. Virtual reality works really well. It really puts you in the position of an animal, and allows you to see, like, get a bit closer to that reality than you may have done in the past. And the film Land of Hope and Glory is a brilliant resource. I'd tell everyone to urge their friends, family, everyone to go and watch that. Yeah, so I'd say education is key, but also when it comes to companies and organizations, we need to show these companies that if they're supporting something that's wrong, so for instance the fur at London Fashion Week, we need to show them that there is a lot of people against what's happening, so they can see that a lot of people don't want that to happen, and then and try and talk to them, try and speak to them, reach out to them and be like, okay, can you stop doing this? This is why you should. It's unethical, it's immoral. And if they don't agree, then we need to take to the streets, and we need to show people that we take more direct action to encourage more support and encourage a wider awareness of what that company is supporting. And so, yeah, there are varying approaches to activism and speaking to people and helping them become vegan. And yeah, you've got to find what's right for you, which ones you can do, which ones you enjoy doing, or which ones you can sustainably do. And yeah, I hope that answers the question a little bit.
No, it certainly does. Pete, I'm going to bring you back at the end for the panel. Yeah. And there was something you mentioned just very quickly about the Socratic method. And of course, a very famous utterance from Socrates was the only thing he knew for sure was how little he knew. And I think that applies to both sides too. I think it's really incumbent upon vegans and the vegan movement is we need to understand our opponent's argument better than they do. And that was certainly something that I encourage. John Stuart Mill, a famous British philosopher of the 18th century or the early 19th century, always said that we have no reason to prefer our opinion having not heard the opinion of the others. Now, I don't agree with the carnivorous opinion. I don't agree with the opinion of those that subjugate animals and induct them into factory farming. However, we need to understand that argument too, and I think that's really important.
Yeah.
As vacuous as it certainly seems to us. Pete, I'll be bringing you back very shortly. Thank you so much. Speak to you again in just a moment. And that was Pete. And how could Pete be any more the opposite of what might be implied from that incredible picture taken of him essentially being put in a chokehold by a member of the police force? So that was Pete, and I'll be bringing Pete and Nikki back very shortly. I'm going to bring onto the show now Belle Georgieva. Now, I've said her name before she comes on, so if I have mispronounced her surname, then perhaps she'll be too polite to mention it. And how about that? So here comes Belle. How are you, Belle?
Hi, Aiden. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. And I know we're running a bit behind, as was inevitable, but we got to you in the end. Belle, let's get your name correct. Let's talk about your name.
You were very close. It's meant to be pronounced Georgieva in the English version of it. So yeah, you were close enough.
Super. Well, close enough isn't good enough. We want accuracy on this show. We don't want to get anything wrong at all. Belle, you've been following what we've been talking about so far. What do you think about effective activism, and what do you think about the way the vegan movement is seen from the outside looking in?
I personally wasn't really an activist until recently, or at least I thought I was, but wasn't really in the sense of like everybody else that was on the show before me is, because I kind of had convinced myself that being vegan and not contributing to these industries is enough, until I heard a speech by Earthling Ed, who is a wonderful human, so inspiring. And so I heard a speech at Vegan Life Festival about activism and how it's not really enough to not contribute to these industries. You have to actively try and stop that suffering that is happening and the injustice, which really made me think of why I haven't been doing this until now, and why I've sort of been closing my eyes to like documentaries such as Earthlings and all the like gory videos that are out there, because I've always known what's happening to animals. I grew up with my grandparents had goats and sheep when I was growing up, so I've seen animals being killed in front of me, and yet somehow I thought it was okay to eat them because it was just conditioned in me, just like it is in everybody else. We grow up with that idea that it's fine, you can play with them until it's time to eat them. And it really takes a big slap in the face, I guess, to sort of wake you up and make you realize just because something has been done for a long time does not mean that it's the right thing to do. And so after I heard that speech by Ed, I've been trying to get more involved with activism. I was at the fur protest at London Fashion Week, where that incredible picture of Pete was taken. I went to an animal sanctuary recently to volunteer, and I'm just really trying to get more involved and, spread the word more, as opposed to just being a passive activist, I guess.
You sort of have a holistic approach to veganism. I think you consider yourself to be a conscious consumer, if that's the correct term. What do you mean by that?
I do. So when I first went vegan, it was very much just about the food. It was like trying not to consume any animal products. And later on, it sort of started developing into a more wider aspect in other aspects of my life. I guess I became really passionate about saving the environment, because I learned how bad actually things are at the moment. And then I feel like once you start reading and learning more about things, you keep finding out more and more and more, and you're probably never gonna stop finding out things that are wrong with our world. But now, at the stage I'm in now, I'm really trying to be more eco-friendly. I've embarked on the zero waste journey, as well as trying to be more of a conscious consumer, as you said, with everything I buy, from food to clothes to things that I own in my house. And it's actually not as difficult as people think. I feel like once you decide to do it, it might seem a little bit scary because it's just so different from what you're used to. But if you have the right reasons and you realize why you're doing this, then it's really not difficult. And maybe it's just me, maybe it's because I live in London, which is an incredible city about, like, when it comes to veganism and zero waste and all of these movements. But honestly, I feel like I'm finally doing what I was always meant to do, and it does not feel like it's difficult at all. Not sure if that makes sense.
No, that's great. And something that I'm conscious of is there will at times be people watching this who aren't vegan and perhaps are considering the movement. And to hear all three of you, three absolutely fantastic guests, but diverse, very different people. There is so much more to veganism than eating tofu and not going to Nando's. There is the planet. There is consumerism. There is climate change. And I think, Belle, you are the reason why in the kitchen house I have a large full bag of plastic. which it's becoming so large now that I think I'm going to have to move house. So you're quite interested in plastic and consumerism. What do you make of the fact that it seems like even apples are wrapped in plastic these days?
Yeah, it is ridiculous when you go to a grocery store and see all of these fruits and vegetables that already have their own packaging, their natural packaging, being put into more plastic, and then people buy them and then go to the cash register and put them in more plastic. And it's not even people like consciously wanting to kill the planet. It's people not knowing how bad it is. It is becoming more and more known how bad the situation is. So a lot of places are either charging for plastic bags now or don't use them at all. People stop using plastic straws, but still every day I meet people who are still very unaware of the situation that we're in. And something that I recently learned was that plastic never really leaves our planet. It would start decomposing for hundreds of years until it goes down to these tiny particles that's like as far as it can get. It does not fully disappear. So it would either go into the soil and make it and release toxins, or go into the water where fish can consume those little particles. It can poison them. It poisons our water, and then people who eat fish, they're also getting these toxins in their body from the plastic that they have used in their life. So it's kind of ridiculous when people think that once you throw something away, it's gone, it's not going to affect you anymore. But there really isn't an away. That concept, it does not exist, because we have this one planet, and whatever we throw away is going to stay on it, and we are going to have to suffer the consequences for the rest of our lives and our kids' lives. And yeah, it's quite sad, but at the same time, changes are happening so quickly now. Almost every week you read of a new place deciding to like ditch straws or ditch plastic cups, and it's sad, but it's hopeful at the same time.
How hopeful are you of the future then? You mentioned the word hope.
I consider myself to be an optimist, and some days I struggle, but I think maybe because of my surroundings, I have amazing friends here in London who are all very environmentally conscious. Most of them are vegan, and I guess the majority of people that I see on a daily basis are people with the same mindset who are actively trying to change the world. But again, you stumble upon people who are so kind of ignorant that then it's kind of difficult to keep your hopes up. But yeah, I do believe that we are changing the world one step at a time. And this year, it's been happening faster than ever.
Yes, the moral arc is long, but we all hope that it does in the end bend towards justice. Belle, I'm going to bring you back shortly for the panel, and I'll speak to you again shortly. Thank you. It's been great to talk to you. What I'm going to do very quickly is speak to Victoria, and Victoria Pecci is my partner in crime for this production. How are you, Victoria?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
It's a bit weird talking to you when you're just upstairs, isn't it?
A little bit.
Yeah, it would make more sense if you just sort of came here, I suppose. Victoria, we're only we're 2 weeks away, yeah. I should say, from Women's Hour. So do you want to explain what Women's Hour is and how that will work with Inside Veganism?
Okay, so on the third Thursday of every month, it is going to be Women's Hour. And on the first show, this 19th of April, we've got Belle on there, who you've just listened to. We've also got Nikki, who you've also listened to. And then we've got two more other ladies called Emily Noble and Emma Thomas. And what we're going to be discussing predominantly in this particular show is discrimination in the workplace, elaborating a bit more on that, on what you've discussed today. And also if people have support as well from family and what they get, feedback from them. Also want to discuss Easter and what people got up to over Easter, how that went down with the family, and also thoughts on eating baby lamb legs. I don't know if you saw the Iceland advert for the La La lamb. It's things like that, you know, just making a mockery of it. And also just talking a little bit more about activism. And I want to elaborate a bit more as well on the zero waste that Belle just discussed with you. And also a bit more going back to the activism, talking, and I just want to give a quote for what Belle just said about you can play with them until it's okay to eat them. I love the fact she said that, and I really want to address that and how our minds work socially with eating animals. And yeah, that's pretty much it. All female panel. We're all going to be chatting away for an hour on the 19th of April between 7 and 8 p.m. UK time.
That is absolutely awesome. Well, that's fantastic. Well, Victoria, thank you very much for organising this edition and next week's. And I look forward to watching you in this seat in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. Speak to you soon.
Yep.
So Women's Hour will be the third Thursday of every month, and look out for that on this channel. Okay, I'm going to bring in all of our guests. I think Nikki might have been vaping in the green screen room, which is probably contrary to health and safety regulations, but never mind, we can let that slide.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Perhaps I was mistaken. It was you that left the list, that you insisted on blue vegan M&Ms and all these superstar demands, but we were happy to be quiescent about that because you're a fantastic guest. So Nikki, you've heard from Pete and you've heard from Belle.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because right now, I suppose we couldn't feel more optimistic about veganism, but we have to be careful because we are very much in our own echo chamber here. But from what you've heard, how does it make you feel about this movement?
The most beautiful thing for me about the movement is how diverse we all are. I was sat here and completely engrossed listening to Pete and then Belle, and everything they say resonates with me deeply. And hopefully I do the same for them. But we're so different, and we owe it to the movement to have our voices heard, so that people can realize, like, Nikki's like me. She's just normal. She's common, and do you know what I mean? And then we've got Pete, who is a different kind of person than Belle, and then the more we get ourselves out there, the more people that relate to us will hopefully leave the cult that is carnism and join us on the journey to making the world a better place.
Pete, what do you think about this cult that Nikki has just described? Is it penetrable anytime soon?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's, if we want to call it a cult, and I guess it's the closest fit. If we want to say something's a cult and it's not veganism, then you're going to say it's carnism. And I think, it's definitely something we can end, because it's based upon lies. It's based upon ignorance. It's based upon the idea that we're not compassionate. But then, like, if you look at any human, everyone will agree, almost everyone will agree, that animal cruelty is wrong. So it's just trying to make that connection, make people realize that they are paying for animal cruelty. They're paying for animals to be exploited and killed. So I think, it's totally possible, and vegan world will happen, because we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
Dear viewer, we're going to run a bit late, so there's still plenty of time to get some questions in. If you have questions for any of our panelists, or any questions in general, and I think this is something, again, not to overlook, there will be people watching this with a certain idea in mind about veganism, and they will have questions. Certainly, when I was a vegetarian, I looked at vegans with a very skeptical eye. And I think it's really important that I never, ever lose touch of that, because if I lose touch of that, I don't think I'll be an effective activist, because I'll have a mental barrier up. Belle, what was your journey into veganism then? Were you a vegetarian first, or did you jump straight in?
I actually tried being vegetarian a couple of times while I was still in high school. I lived at home, and because I've always loved animals, that was my thing. Like, I never let any bugs be killed at home. There was always, the cats and the dogs and the lambs that I would play with. And so a couple of times I would just decide, oh, okay, I'm going to go vegetarian now. And then my mom would make like ribs or something for like the family. And I'll be like, okay, if you insist. And it was just so easy to like switch back. And I couldn't realize why, but I guess because 100% of the people around me, my environment was with that mindset. So it was just so easy to go back into that convenience. And then I moved to Copenhagen, where I went to university, and one of my classmates, she was vegetarian. She told me about how we're not actually meant to eat meat because our intestines are 3 times longer than those of carnivore animals. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Now I have 2 reasons to be vegetarian. So I decided to give it another try. Skype with my parents to tell them. They were kind of freaked out at first. Make sure you get enough of everything. And I was like, it's fine. It's not like I'm going to go vegan or something. And then 3 months later, surprise, mom. But yeah, I think I watched the documentary 101 Reasons to Go Vegan. It's a speech actually on YouTube. And that kind of like made me go vegan overnight from like being vegetarian for a couple of months before that. It's just finally finding out all of those things in like the span of 1 hour, all the facts that you cannot really close your eyes to anymore. So yeah, that was it, and never looked back ever since. Never will.
Nikki, what was your journey?
My journey was bizarre because it's me all over. Sorry, Mimi is like speaking up.
Please introduce the young creature.
This is Mimi.
This is
Which
Mimi.
is also my mom's name. Hi, mom. Watching.
You have to tell me, how do you spell Mimi?
Mimi.
Mimi.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's my best friend. She's been with me coming up to 8 years, and she's been with me through an awful lot of things. Yeah, I love her. So my journey, it does count. So I have to mention, it was about 10 years ago. I went vegetarian after watching. Does anyone recall the program Kill It, Cook It, Eat It? There was a live pig slaughter, and me being the conspiracy theorist that I am, I actually thought the way this has happened was too clean, too quick, too nice. I don't think this is really what happens. So then I started having a look into slaughterhouse footage, and what I found was absolutely grim. Went vegetarian. That lasted about 3 years. Didn't know anyone else that was a vegetarian. Was at a barbecue, and I succumbed to a chicken's leg. And then it's a weird psychological thing, when you fail at something, so you just continue to fail because you already did it. It was like that. And then I was back into just eating all the animal products just literally from that day. And I'll be honest, I don't think I gave it much thought. People were saying to me, just eat it. It's there. It's dead already. You need it for protein. What else are you going to eat? All those kind of things. And that's all I was hearing. And I was very young. It's 10 years ago. So yeah. And then wasn't until I was 29 that I want to just say it like a disclaimer, because I don't want to encourage other people to take my word for this. This is my personal experience. I just need to put that out there. But I'm
extremely nervous, but carry on.
No, it's not bad or anything. I've always suffered with quite extreme and debilitating at times anxiety and depression. And so about 1.5 years ago, I was meditating repeatedly, and I was meditating on just this one question: why why does this keep happening to me? I've dealt with and addressed any traumas and stuff like that, and I was just still experiencing this horrendous anxiety and depression. And yeah, I kept asking. I meditated for 5 evenings and mornings, about an hour, asking why, just really concentrating on it. And 5th morning, I just got this sentence in my mind that was, you are what you eat. And it was resounding. And I thought, okay, you are what you eat. Interesting. And I was thinking, yeah, I consume like sugar, junk food, all that kind of bad stuff. And then it was like coming to breakfast time. And I think I looked at a pack of bacon and was like, that's a murdered animal. And it just was like, bing! I think I then actually Googled the sentence, you are what you eat. And before I knew it, I'd watched Cowspiracy and Earthlings, and I was vegan. Literally like that, within a couple of hours before I'd eaten that day. And that was it. And then from then it snowballed. Now I'm here talking to you beautiful people.
Pete, Nikki mentioned slaughtering. What do you make of the use of factory footage in terms of highlighting what's happening? For the most part, do you think it's effective, or do you think people simply turn away and think it's somehow an anomaly and doesn't represent what normally happens, even though, of course, we know that it is what normally happens? What are your intuitions about that?
So I think it's vital that it's out there for people to access. It needs to be there. Like, people need to have access to actually what is actually happening. I think for varying people, they need to see certain different things. For some people, they need it. I think with veganism, it's like everyone will go vegan at some point. It just takes certain things. Some people have to get closer to the reality of it, so closer to the footage. Some people might need to see it firsthand. Some people might just need to hear about what's happening. It really varies. So it's vital that the footage is there to be seen, and footage from varying sources. So you could have CCTV footage, you could have undercover footage, and from a whole range of places. But everyone likes to think that where they're from, like, there's this idea like if it's local, it's okay, and it doesn't happen wherever you're from. But like, locality doesn't equal like some kind of humane way. It's not. There's no kind of link there between how local something is and how moral it is. So I think it's vital that it's there. And occasionally there's certain ways that you could just hold footage and show someone. But if you do it, there's specific ways you could do it so that, for instance, like the Cube of Truth, Anonymous for the Voiceless, I think really works really well. There are always cases of people kind of getting offended by people stood there. They think, oh, well, you're not giving me a choice. But really, everyone does have a choice. Like, you can approach it. If you're kind of running up to someone, put it in their face, I think that's less likely to cause a positive impact. Occasionally it might, but if you're there to kind of show someone and talk someone through it, then that's a really positive and good way to kind of show them the information. And but it's vital that people know what's actually happening, and know it's not kind of isolated events.
I'm not quite sure where the quote originated from. It was possibly Edmund Burke that said, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And we're trying to do something. Belle, there is a fantastic irony about the perception of veganism that I was going to ask you about. I think it's commonly seen that we are all very squeamish. We're not willing to face reality. I don't know about you, Belle, and I'm not saying I enjoy it, but I am 99% certain that I have watched more slaughterhouse videos than 99% of meat eaters. And I think that's the irony about all this. What do you make of the images that the vegan movement pushes on social media? And do you share Pete's view that although it might upset or offend some, it does serve a utilitarian purpose?
Yeah, definitely. I strongly believe that if you choose to do something, you need to know everything about it. And if you choose to eat animals and to pay for their suffering and murder, you have to know what exactly is happening to them. Because I personally, like I said, I grew up with animals, and I've seen animals, being raised and then killed in front of me. And I still thought that was okay. But the things that I witnessed were way more different than factory farming now. And I think that's why maybe it took me so long to realize why like eating eggs and drinking dairy is so bad, because I grew up with that idea of the like perfect, harmonious way of producing animal products, which is probably 1% of the reality. And even if it's produced in that like perfect and good for the animals way, it's still not something that it's okay to be done, and a lot of people, it is, I don't want to be offensive, but it is ignorance with them. They choose not to know what's happening because they know it's easy. They don't want to disrupt their traditions, their convenience, their habits. And once you actually go to them and start telling them what's happening and showing them what's happening, they're more likely to actually realize, oh wait, that is not right. But the truth is, the majority of people still choose to live the way they do because they don't know the whole truth. Like me and all of you assume we all went vegan because somebody showed you something, because somebody filmed that footage, put it online, and you got to it, and then it clicked in your head. So if we're always like closing our eyes to what's happening, we're never going to actually make a real change.
Folks, I'm going to go to you all in turn to give you a chance to give a shout out to where people can find you on social media. Belle, I'm going to start with you, but before you shout out your Instagram handle and where people can find you, you did say something really interesting about ignorance. And I'm something of a fan of Richard Dawkins, and he makes this point a lot. Ignorance is not the same as stupidity. Ignorance is different from stupidity. It's not an intellectual defect to be ignorant. It's simply not knowing. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to educate people. We're not calling them stupid. We're just telling them that they don't know. And we think that if they did know, then they would do differently. Belle, thank you so much for all of your time. Where can people find you, Belle?
Thank you. I'm mostly active on Instagram, which is Beatle Belle, Beatles spelled like the Beatles, which is not because I'm a huge Beatles fan. It was because I made a typo when I was making my Instagram handle. But that's another story. So that's where I'm most active, just my Instagram.
Awesome. Belle, thank you so much. We'll do this again sometime.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Nikki, it's been a great show. Thank you for getting off to a great start. Where can people find you, Nikki?
Thank you so much for having me. Greatly appreciated. I love this. People can find me on Instagram at Nikki_Tizzle, or on YouTube as Nikki T, and Facebook as Nikki T.
Awesome. Nikki, thank you so much. You'll be on Women's Hour in 2 weeks' time, I believe.
Of course.
With Belle.
Yes.
Superb. So you're most welcome. Thank you for doing this. Speak to you again soon.
Take care. You
too. And Pete, I'm just checking to make sure that the Met haven't kicked in your door. You look like you're still okay. Pete, thank you so much thank you so much for stepping in at short notice and being such a well-spoken, fantastic ambassador for everything that we're trying to do. Pete, where can people find you?
Thank you. Well, so Instagram is the one I use most at the moment, and that's at Let All Be Just. So LETALLBEJUST. It's the same for YouTube. So for YouTube. And if you go to actually the Compassionate Being on YouTube and Facebook, you'll find it there. So the Compassionate Being, Twitter as well. Let All Be Just. They're the main ones I use at the moment. That's it. Thank you so much as well for organizing all this.
No, thank you. I mean, it's not about any of us. It's about something far bigger. And of course, the irony is the fruits of all this probably won't be realized until you and I are are in the ground and very much decomposed, but we can do all we can while we're alive. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're most welcome. So this was episode 1 of season 1 of Inside Veganism. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. We'd love to hear what you felt about this show. It's sort of hard to know how the format would work until the format was launched. Certainly the format can change. We'd love to hear your opinion. And if you're still tuning in now, or if you're watching this on replay, please share it. I think far more people will watch this on replay than are ever likely to watch it live for a number of reasons, not least different time zones. We'll be back next Thursday, same time every week, UK time, 7 p.m. And on the third Thursday of each month, it will be Women's Hour hosted by Victoria Pecci with an all-female panel. Please do like us on Facebook. That way you will definitely keep up to date with upcoming broadcasts. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure. And I've been very humbled by being able to speak to such fantastic guests. Until next time, thank you so much.